Hi, everyone. Welcome to A Way of God's Remembrance with Michael Hayes. This is presented by Awake to Love. I'm Lee here with Cindy. We are the volunteer Zoom hosts and so grateful that you are here. As a way of introduction, I will read Michael's words to bring clarity to the focus and format of this gathering. This is a weekly gathering for those seeking greater awareness of their true nature. There are many paths and approaches to higher consciousness and to greater awakening to who we truly are. The essence, the truth of all these paths is more about remembering who we are and have always been, rather than becoming something different or more than we have seen ourselves to be. A way of God's remembrance goes to the heart, to the intention of all the paths. This is what we will explore together each week. Michael will share thoughts and awarenesses that come forward as relevant and purposeful for our time together, followed by questions and answers related to what he shares about. We will begin with an invocation of light to help support us all to be in collective alignment. After the light invocation, we will play a recording to lead us in Anai Hu chanting, leading us in the light invocation from the top of the mountain, my friend, Ron Holnick.
Thank you, Lee. Top of the mountain. Wow. Hmm. Lord God of all creation, we come before you this evening with joy in our hearts. This joy comes to us through our participation in the experiential awareness of our spiritual nature, our true nature, our only nature in reality. And for this time together, we give our thanks. So be it.
Welcome, all of you. I wanted to say all my friends, and I guess we're friends. I certainly have great love for all of you. Welcome to A Way of God's Remembrance. It's interesting each week because usually I have for about a day, the process sort of sets me up for whatever I'm going to talk about so that I have some idea what I'm going to talk about when I start. And then I forget, but then it comes forward again. So, but I didn't really have that this week. I had a lot going on, um, but then Spirit had mercy on me in the last 12 minutes before, and I had a visitation. So I think I'm going to look for inspiration to the one that visited. Um, there's a saying in the Bible which says that which can be shaken will be shaken. And in a strange way, the only thing that the shaking can't disturb is that part of us that is always in remembrance. The shaking has an undoing quality to everything else, all the scripts, the stories, the fantasies, the conceptions, the determinations, the um, the paradigms we construct. And we do construct them. Now, some of them are already constructed by the society we come into, by the powers that have governance in this world, or at least that are allowed to appear to have governance in this world, and that we fall into cooperation with those, or we construct our own. It's often when we construct our own vision of our life and our own rule book of what life's about, it's easy for us to think that we're creators in that process. And there's a kind of truth to it, but there's a big untruth in it because the reality is so much of it is already formulated in such a way that it will engage us and draw us in and have a degree of control over us to continue us down the road of perpetually experiencing and regurgitating um, the same truth, the same expressions, the same experiences, the same ahas, the same gains, not realizing that we already gained that before 50 other times. Having a eureka moment for the 51st time is still the same eureka. It's kind of appalling and in some ways disheartening to realize just how long we can be caught in all this and have been caught in all this. And yet none of it is wasted. And that's one of the real paradoxes of the whole adventure. Because in a strange way, the more we've been caught in a thing, the more when we finally get free of it, we will understand the nature of the trap. And that understanding of the nature of the trap gives us a freedom in relationship to that trap. When we really understand it, we have actually the freedom from it, but also towards it. And what that means is that we can see it coming and stay out of the trap, but we also have the capacity to actually go right into the trap, almost like stick our head in the lion's mouth, and then know exactly when to pull it out so we don't get bitten or beheaded. And so there's a strange paradox in the whole game of this, that it's almost like the longer we screw up in all this, the longer we're fooled. When we finally get out, the better we understand what was fooling us. And it's a strange enigma of that in the most bizarre way, there is a reward for sort of being last. I think somewhere in the Bible it says that one of the last shall be first. And maybe that's what it's referring to. So when I talk about this, I obviously think of my teacher, John Roger, who was quite willing to admit that he was the biggest screw up, that he'd kind of done everything so many times. There's nothing we could do that he hadn't done. And yet I saw mastery with him and an understanding of all the dimensions of this illusion, of the delusions we go into in this illusion, and how both to get out of these illusions, but also in a way to stay out of them. And those are sometimes two different things. It'd be like clearing. Sometimes we clear stuff. There are ways you can clear stuff by asking for light, and a thing will be taken off you. Let's say something's challenging you or testing you, or maybe just creating you being in a miserable space, and through your prayers, through grace, light intercedes and pulls the thing away from you. Well, that could be really wonderful, but it also could be, in a way, a disadvantage to you, because if you didn't really learn how that thing got to you, why you allowed it in, well, almost inevitably it's going to come and revisit you, or something like it's going to come and revisit you. And in that process, you'll once again be stuck in the I don't know what to do place, that kind of befuddled place that is so common for us. And yet, if we just don't get that grace or that exoneration from the trial and tribulation of that moment, and we stay present in the process and keep asking for support, but more than that, reach inside of ourselves for the support. There's a saying which says, pray like it's all up to God, but work like it's all up to you. And if we really will do our part to come to source the own depth of our beingness, we can get answers to things. And if we get the answers in that way, they're really ours. Now, it doesn't mean we can't gain support and advantage from other people who've already got those answers. But looking to them to do it for us in the long run will work against us. They may do it for us because that may be to our advantage in a greater scope, or they may do it for us so we can learn that in the long run, it's better not to have it done for us. Now, this is a complicated thing. I remember John Roger, my teacher, saying, anything you put between me and you, I will help you get. And I realized, wow, you're helping me get something that's actually going to be a lot of problems for me. And it's going to really create a lot of struggle in my life. And I realized, yeah, but I wanted it. So he was letting me have that thing I wanted, and realized it really wasn't all that I hoped it would be, so that I would have then the clarity to realize I could pass on it. And since I was wanting it enough that it was coming between us, he did that. And I see God doing that for all of us. When we really want something, God lets us have it, and then everything that goes with it. And I often think, well, how do we want to not want? That was always my prayer. John Rudge's prayer was to have his mind leave him alone, and mine was to not to. I wanted to not want. I wanted to be free of desire. And as I've done this work and come more and more conscious of the spirit, and come more into this remembrance that I talk so freely about, I've realized that the wants don't necessarily go away. But what happens in a strange way, the wants are disempowered in my consciousness. I can still, they're still there, and it's like I'm sitting there watching them. And whereas before they had a very powerful pull upon me, most of the time now I just sort of look at them. But they still exist. And I kind of believe they're still there so that I can recognize them in other people and recognize the process of others so I can serve them and support them. There's a radical unwillingness in the egoic nature of the self to surrender to the truth of spirit. And part of the way that we come into that surrender, into that fullness of remembrance, is we also come into a radical willingness to do whatever it takes. John Roger once said, when you want God consciousness as much as you would if your head was being held underwater, as much as you'd want that next breath, that's when you get it. That was a little confounding to me because nobody ever held my head underwater that long. But I kind of got the idea. I would have probably say it in my way, which would be saying, which doesn't mean I'm exactly talking about the level of God's conscience he was referencing, but for my own version of it, it's when I want the pain to stop that I am experiencing, having allowed something to become between me and you, Lord. When I want that pain to go away, to be free to that pain enough that I'll do whatever it takes to be free of that pain, that's when I will find that resource, call forward that resource, claim the truth of the source within that will free me from that was between me and my Lord, and between me and that ecstasy, that freedom, that timeless truth that was always so, that lets something come between me and experiencing. So we've all got this as the truth of our process in this existence, that we're all coming to remembrance. Strangely, that's even a lie when I said it. We are all always in remembrance. We just all haven't remembered that remembrance. We're still being seduced in some way by the Maya, as the Hindus call it, or the amnesia of this existence, of this reality. There's a golden thread from the high dimensions of God. At least it's a golden thread when it comes down to in and through us, from above us and down through us. And higher up into the octaves of God, you could know it as a golden thread, or you could know it as a golden note of sound, or you could know it as the intention of love eternal. There's different ways it could be known. But it starts out as an issuing forth out of God of intentionality, and plays out into all things manifest. And the sound of God, the word of God, the name of God, all those are different ways we connect to that, and it connects to us. It is singing in the hearts of every being. It is singing in the essence of all reality. Every cell is in a vibration in response to its tonality. It is the carrier wave of love that has complete autonomy and yet complete engagement with all that is. It is simultaneously both of it and apart from it. It holds and exists in this distinct duality. Yet there is no duality, but it's duality by appearance and duality by presentation. But it is always the same, and it is always so. And it is that which was calling us forth into this creation, and it is that which calls us forth out of this creation, calls us into remembrance. It calls us and it serves us. It sets us free from that which would subjugate us. And yet it has allowed that subjugation in a strange, miraculous way. It also exists within that that does subjugate us and would continue to subjugate us. Its essence, its truth, knows no boundaries. It is entirely present in this moment, offering us complete availability of all the graces and glories of God, each and every one is a singular facet in the great jewel of God's manifestation. We are each treasured and adored. Yet all of this that we are is but a pale reflection of that which we are, that is beyond being, that is beingness but not being, that is essence, not form. Every second, every hour, the song of God is performed by God. And those that sense the resonance of it may sing it as the angels do in heaven, or as we might by a joyful song in our heart, or as we might when we say our spiritual words, the names of God, the names of the glory of God, the names of what is. We are all to walk with God in all the ways God would have us. We do thank you, God, for allowing us to come together in this remembrance and celebration of your holy Son. Amen. Now, Lee is going to share a few words related to sharing, and then we'll do a little bit of sharing. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. God bless you, Michael. This is guidelines for questions. Questions are to be about a way of God's remembrance and what Michael has shared. To ask a question, please raise your Zoom hand. You can find that by hovering near the bottom of your Zoom window. Click on the React button. A pop-up appears. Choose Raise Hand. Please also turn on your video for full participation. If you are on a low bandwidth connection and are unable to, so be it. Most important, and since so many of us have had the blessing of working with Michael over so many years to clear so many things, this is not that. Please do not ask questions of a personal nature and do not ask Michael for assistance in clearing. Questions are to be for your benefit, the benefit of those of us gathered, and those who will participate via the archives. We ask that you look to the integrity of your intentions before asking a question of Michael, and thank you for your cooperation. Finally, here is the legal consent. By raising your hand and asking questions of Michael, you're giving full consent to Awake to Love to make the audio and video of this gathering, including your sharing, available as online archives for anyone to access. Please do not raise your hand and do not share unless you are in full agreement. Thank you. Michael, hands are manifesting.
only see one of them little gold. There's a couple golden hands.
And Kelly has her flesh-colored hand blending into her flesh-colored wall, matching her flesh-colored face.
I see. We're gonna try. Oh, there's a Peter, but I don't know if it's the Peter I shared with last week or not. So, uh, different Peter. We'll do that, Peter. Hi, Peter.
Hey, it's Peter Bailey. So no, we did not talk last week because I was not online. Um, so I didn't, but this was a continuation from 2 weeks ago. A question about existence, an easy one for you. Um, my understanding is that we exist, well, let's have a distinction. There are different levels of existences. JR talks about there's a causal form, and it's maybe having a family doing its thing and on different levels. I want to understand the distinctions of how that works in consciousness, how that works with soul. And if I go up and I can be aware of that existence, can they go up and have an awareness of me?
Well, they might not go up to have awareness of you. If you're talking about a causal existence, wouldn't the up and down is really an illusionary thing. There is no up or down in it. There is, let's say, difference of frequency. We would tend to think of that which was where we are as a denser form of the frequency. There are denser frequencies than this, though, but this is a very dense one. And do we have simultaneous existence on those other levels? Yes, you do. If you were to really come fully into God's remembrance, the stuff I'm talking about, fully in that, you would know that you have existence and in a sense have a kind of form of existence in the physical, the astral, and the causal, and the mental, and the etheric. And then you would actually have a realization that you have an existence in the 27 levels above that, into the essence, Godhead. And then potentially you could have awareness of existence even past that. So God is all of it. And the singularization of God helps to serve a purpose of God experiencing the differentiation that it's created, and also those aspects of itself that are experiencing differentiation to experience what reality seems to be or appears to be in a differentiated state, and also from that differentiated state have a simultaneous relationship to other differentiated states. Generally, the differentiations that you're talking about have a protection from one another. Okay. Why? Let's say, for example, if you were to be fully conscious here of a existence in the causal realm, you'd undoubtedly go insane. It would be too hard to work with that. Now, the soul can have existences in more than one physical expression at a time, depending on the evolution and the capacity of that soul to process the learning. So I've given an example like, well, it's like the soulic form then extends part of the essence of the soul comes down into the physicality for it to give life to the body to have that experience. But like simultaneously, the soul might have existences not just in the astral causal mental, but in other dimensions of the physicality, other universes even that exist. It's very difficult to have those because there's a protection set in place, because it does tend to create insanity should somebody get into that. Occasionally people do that through drugs, which is one of the big no-nos of why to stay away from the really powerful psychedelics, because if you were to to do that. And you'll see some of those people sometimes they're on the street corner talking to somebody this because they're
Yep.
flooded by content that they can't function and deal with because they're 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 dealing in references that are unreferenceable here. When you get farther along in your remembrance, if you remembrance yourself up into the spirit and know reality as a spirit beyond the soul, then it might be allowed. John Roger had that capacity. He had existences in other universes that he knew about. I know because in my work with him, we would go into those universes and he was, oh yeah, I know this. And he said, yeah, I got a form here. I keep it here. And I was like, he was very comfortable with all that. At the time, I was a little blown away, but so he's talked some about this in some of his. There was a SAT tape a few months ago. We talked about. I think it
Right.
was on Australia, and he talked about it. Another dimension that's just out of a slightly different phase of this,
Right.
and you might be there, and you might have a lot of the same thing going on, but a little different.
Right. Yeah. He mentioned that we could have a family there that we don't
Yeah,
enter. Yeah.
yeah. I know that one. That one I have been into,
Yeah.
and I do have a family there.
Yeah.
And it's I don't go there all the time, but I know about it. But occasionally I'll look in. But I can look into it, but I can't look into it from this consciousness. It would just blow the consciousness up. So I have to get in the spirit and then know it as the spirit knows it.
Right.
And the spirit has that impartiality to all of it, so that it can just go into it, but not be of it. But again, it's a tricky thing. It wasn't something I asked for. It was something that was shown to me. And it was shown to me in one way to help me in this existence than this one, because some of the things in that reality are very similar to this one. And it was showing me that I could let go of those things in this one and I'd still have them in that one,
Mhm.
which helped me and my unconscious to release a level of attachment I was having trouble letting go of.
Mhm.
So I don't know if that answers your question. You want to understand it, and I got to tell you, the very thing you're trying to understand is part of what gets in your way.
I can see that too.
Well, it does because you're doing. I mean, I did it for. I won't even tell you how long because it'd be embarrassing. This idea that I would understand my way to God. If I understood enough, then I'd get it.
Yeah.
And it was the release of the whole quest for understanding. I had a visitation with JR before I met him physically. I remember I was sitting on like a playground bench and he came and was there. He was talking to me and I came out of that conversation and I said, it was like, first he was showing me the illusion of time and he said, yesterday you died in dreams in dreams in your sleep. Tomorrow you may die under wheels in the street. Only in this moment will the meaningless make sense.
Mm.
Asking not to answer all. So can be tasted the sweet fullness of existence.
Mm. I love that. Thank you. Yeah.
Well, there was something I got from him when I was a couple of years before I met him physically. But
I think the overall,
so for you, when you come into divine knowing, you'll then understand.
Mhm.
All the understandings you'll have on the way to it will be partial and will have a value to your mind and your ego. And because they're valued by your ego, they will probably delay your progression to full awareness.
That's
No,
helpful.
knowing what I know now, I would not waste my time in trying to understand it all.
Mhm.
I would put all my effort into the knowing of it. And the knowing of it, to truly know it, you must be it. And to truly be it, you must let go of the illusion of this so that you can be in the truth of that.
That's very helpful. It's really helpful. And I'm getting more comfortable with saying to myself, I don't know.
Yeah, those are my magic words. When those ones came in, I realized it was what I was doing, but it took me a while to realize where I was getting all these answers from. Because I was working with people and I was coming up with all this stuff. And then one day I told the story. I tape recorded. Somebody said, record it. Maybe you'll write a book someday. And one day I listened to the recording and went, oh my God. Every third or fourth sentence was, I don't know. And right afterwards, I would come up with all these answers. So it's convoluted to our normal way of seeing reality.
Mhm.
But everything in this thing I'm talking about in the way of God's remembrance is a reversal of how we've done it. Instead of looking for God, we become God looking.
Mhm.
So I'll throw that out again and again.
That's helpful.
All right, Peter, bless you.
Bless you too. Thank you.
All right, I see Michelle has a hand up. I don't see Michelle Genoa, I guess.
We're asking her to unmute. There's no video and not getting a response yet.
All right, we'll send her the light. She can figure it out. Meanwhile, we'll just all enjoy the presence of spirit as it lives and moves and sings its song of joy in us. All right, let's move on to Kelly Sheehan. And if Michelle figures it out.
Hi, Michael. Thank you for your generosity. It's amazing. I wanted to ask about
I talked to you yesterday on my radio show. You're
did
the only, we
my
forgot
mind is blown.
we forgot to promote it. No, I forgot to promote it. Let's put it that way. I
I
forgot
may
to
have
ask
been
the
the only
person.
one there.
Yeah, for all I knew, probably somebody else was there, but it was okay.
It was amazing. I could listen to you talk for a full hour, but then I just thought, oh my God, this space is open. I'm going to take it. So thank you. But I have a question from that about you mentioned the soul will send an impression,
Say that
something that
again.
has,
The soul will send an impression.
I think you said the soul will send an impression and it would be something that it would know about, that you would have knowledge of, and then you would you receive it as an experience I was talking about.
Yeah, it'll help you be able to. You'll have an yes, okay, I remember now. So you'll be having an experience of the transcendent, but you'll to bring it back in such a way that you can, first of all, know you're having it, but also, in a sense,
Right.
make either sense of it or at least uh, get enough of a hold of it that it can be a tool for you and that it will support your growth.
Yeah.
And so when that happens, um, you're you'll be it'll be you'll be in a sense you'll create a construction to have meaning and to have a tangibleness to it out of something. The levels that we're talking about that you're going up above the soul level are so different than this that if we didn't have a translation of it, we couldn't make sense of it. But the spirit will help that translation into your soul and then into your mind and into your consciousness so that you can have a reference of what that really is and what that really was.
So much of what comes through is like I guess I would call it maybe the phenomena of remembrance. Would that all be kind of through that same framework, that an impression that I would bring through from that I would have awareness of on the other levels. Am I following correctly?
Um, hmm. Yeah, you're getting a little caught, similar to the last person we shared with. You're trying to understand it all.
Yeah.
Um, you're to experience it, and then what will happen is there will be support for you to have understanding as that will come out of that experience. But you're straining too hard to experience it, which is to understand it, which is taking you out of the experience.
I had a flood of awarenesses of, 20 years of the stuff that's happened to me. And there was something that just really got my attention. And it was so powerful. It was big records showed up in my room in the middle of the night, and they were bright red and 4 feet wide by just giant with, you know, symbols that I couldn't recognize from this planet, scrolling through. And after we talked, I had this awareness that I maybe had a misunderstanding about what that experience was. But much of my life and these kind of things that have happened to me, I've been very fearful, and um, I think part of me wants to know how those experiences are coming to me, so that I can relax and feel uh, less afraid by, because even my memories, as you can see, they make me fearful because of the things that I've seen and experienced. And then I all of a sudden, for the very first time in 22 years, wondered what was on that scroll. And was that me messaging myself, or was that, some,
That
guidebook?
scroll,
I don't
that's
know.
that scroll wasn't you messaging yourself, but that was something from on high showing you something.
It was what?
It was, let's say, something from on high showing you something,
Okay.
to activate a level of remembrance in you.
Oh, okay. That and a little fear.
So then it activates the fear.
Yeah.
The ego in you will be afraid of all of this, because of all this is, it conceives all this as like a monster coming to destroy its little perfect illusionary world. But it really doesn't destroy any of this, but it frees us from the illusion of the realness of this. But for the ego, that's destroying it,
Yeah.
because the ego is in a massive pretense of its realness, of its tangibility, even of its eternalness. But it isn't an eternal process. It is a concoction we create in time and space.
Oh, I'm glad that you mentioned that. That's good to look at it that way.
You're going to be somebody who's going to see a lot, and a lot of it you're not going to understand, but take what you get and make impressions, write down notes, whatever you do, to help so you can get back. And at some point, it suddenly it'll click, and you go, oh, that's what that was. See, your mind is still too formidable through its connection to your ego, and that it tries to, as soon as you start to make it more tangible, it goes off in this huge analytical quest. And that's just taking you away from what you want.
Yeah.
So hence you've been kind of protected from that. Yeah, it's okay. It's all good.
Yeah, when the remembrance fully arrives, what happens to all the psychic awareness? Does that kind of settle down and um,
Well, the psychic awareness can still be there. It's because it's an attribute, if you want to call it a gain we have gained through participating in these other levels, through all these forms. We've gained more and more ability, in a sense, to use the apparatus, the causal body, the mental body, to use we've learned how to sense through those forms, get information through those forms. And so we still have it in there too. It doesn't necessarily go away. If we're smart and we get more and more into remembrance, which means we'll get spiritual sight, then we kind of put aside the psychic and do the spiritual because it's so much more clear. It's when you see it spiritually, you not only get the information exactly as it would best serve you or whoever the information is for, but it's given to you. It's given to you also the guidance and how to present it. If you're just getting it out of the Akashic records through your own psychic ability, well, you've got this information. Now, what do you do with it? Well, you decide. Well, how do you know what to do with it? Well, you guess. And if you're really good at it, you might find that there's you might find that you could do some good for people and yourself. And other times you'll just confound them and confound yourself. So it's one of those things that could be very useful, but it doesn't have the same protection and the same clarity with it as the spiritual. So the spiritual is obviously a wiser choice if we can get to it.
absolutely.
Again, trying to get to it is certainly something I tried to do, but what I really came to realize is that I'm never going to get to it by me trying to get to it. I've got to let go and let God and let it's trying to get to me. And so I let it get to me. It's like I chased it until it caught me. So that's what I'm talking about.
Thank you.
Bless you, bless you.
God bless you. I love you.
Okay, there was Michelle. We asked her before, did anything happen with her?
She has reappeared. Look,
There she is. Hello, Michelle.
Hi, Michael. Hi, Kelly. Thank you. Funnily, a lot of my question has been, you've talked about a lot of the essence of it already,
Okay.
but it came up last week. And so I thought, given that Zoom stopped me trying to ask it last time I put my hand up today, I thought I'd persevere to ask it. My question is that I know it's a mental level, but I'm still grappling with over many, many lifetimes. I get it that I've remembered and then forgotten and then remembered and forgotten that I'm divine, that I'm God. And so the essence of my question and why I feel like I'm kind of compelled to ask it is what can I do to not forget this lifetime? Because when I look at experiences
I'm
and
gonna
things,
I'm gonna just share with
yeah,
you.
yeah, good.
You haven't really remembered. You haven't really remembered through all those lifetimes. You have you've remembered more of it. You've remembered mostly you've come awake to the reality that there's more to you than this. And then you've had levels of progressive awakening, even since you've awakened into your soul, the essence of soul, and first getting to know the soul somewhat in contact with this physical body. Then you started to go out of the body and know it in the soulic expression, or soulic expression, the astral plane, and the causal plane, the mental plane, soulic expression, the etheric plane, and then you got back into the soulic sense of the soul of itself in the soul. Um, That would be a one. Those would be things you kind of came into and then got, forgot. Now, that's normal. We get a taste of it when we forget. The remembrance I'm talking about is another level of remembrance. I'm saying it's possible for you to come into the remembrance. Which really happens in the one I'm talking about is you let go and you let God. And you free yourself from the illusion of you. Free yourself from the illusion of your individuation of yourself. And in the freeing of yourself of that, you come the, in a sense, the God that you're always part of, in a sense, the God that you're always an extension of, the God that you always are, ultimately, extends the truth of itself into that aspect of itself that's been parading in this world of time and space as Michelle.
So,
And when
so
that
would a
and when that
tool,
and when that happens to you and for you, there's a kind of remembrance that shifts the consciousness in a different way than the other levels of remembrance. It produces a peace that surpasses understanding. It produces an aha that is beyond all other experience. Now, can't once you really have that as a conscious thing, you can never truly forget it again. You can be distracted from it. But if you really ever get that, you always have it. Now, you could be distracted enough that you could have a have that and somehow come back and stumble and bumble into time and space and spend 1,000 more lifetimes here. Could you do that? You could, but it would haunt you and it would pull on you and call you back. But see, we don't get that until, in a strange way, we are really ready to be done with this time space game. And then it comes upon us, and we realize Jesus's quote. He said, "Of myself, I can do nothing." This that I'm talking about, we cannot do. We cannot change ourselves to become that one who gets to have that. We can do changes to our personality. We can do changes to our life expression. We can get more mental understanding. We can change our levels of awareness in the astral causal mental etheric of what's going on. But this that
so
I'm talking about is not something we become. It's something we always are. And we finally allow the fullness of it to come to us and through us. And I'm telling you right now, this that I'm talking about is doing you and it's doing me and it's doing everybody on this call. It's doing everyone. It's living us all. It is all that is, living through all the forms of creation. It's calling you and inviting you to a greater experience of its presence in you and through you. And it's doing that. The strangest, most bizarre thing is we tend to think it's only available to us when we earn the right or we work out a certain karma and do all these things or through all these efforts, then we'll finally get that chance. But the truth is, it's always there and it's always available. We just have to come to that place where we let go of our individual story and surrender to this greater truth of this greater reality that is with us, that we are part of. And right there, right as I'm talking to you, it's touching you. See? But it's always there. That's the baffling thing in the whole thing. When I came into remembrance, the most stunning thing about it was the knowing in that moment of remembrance that I'd always been in remembrance. And I'd been in remembrance even when I was like I'd been in remembrance the whole time, even when I kind of nodded off and did the dream of time and space and all these umpteen lifetimes. I'd still been in the remembrance. Always. And that doesn't change the things we do to help us ourselves become more awake to it. We just see those things in a different light. We don't take the idea of our, let's say, tones of initiation as well. At the start, we may, because our minds work that way, is like, well, these are like keys to a ladder, so we'll climb up to heaven, because that's how we think when we don't really know better. But eventually, you realize, no, these are keys of remembrance. They're helping by chanting them and focusing on them. They're calling forward. They're calling into us, through us, this that is always so. They're calling the truth to us, the truth, the remembrance of this truth. And these are tools of remembrance. When we hear a master like John Roger talk, he's in that state of remembrance, so he's speaking from it. That's why he would say, I could stand up here and say ham and eggs, ham and eggs, ham and eggs, and the same thing would happen. Because what was really happening is we were being activated into remembrance. Because he was in that level of remembrance. And people that were around him we realized, yeah, I don't care. We could do nothing just to be in the same room with him because something happened. This amazing thing happened. The remembrance was starting to move. The remembrance you want is available. You and most of us, for most of our lives, have seen the spiritual path as a path of great effort. When I had a sharing with John Roger about this that I'm talking about, before I knew it was about this that I'm talking about, it's a long time ago, he said, the less you do about it, the faster it will happen, which was mind-boggling to me at the time. But why was it so? Because I doing it was the problem. I had to get out of the I, get beyond the I. Now I could use the same tools of initiation tones and seminars and discourses to get me out of the I. And why would they do that? Because they were all sourced back into a level, the non-magnetic level of the spirit, where the remembrance is present. And so every time I read a discourse, every time I chanted the tone, or every time, I listened to one of those seminars, there was a message of remembrance. Oh, but for a long time I was thinking, oh, I'm doing this and I'm doing all this to get to God. What was really going on is extending itself into all of this, into all levels of my beingness, calling all the levels of my beingness awake to this truth of its presence, truth of its eternal presence with me and my eternal presence with it. And so my story in my head of me as this really gung-ho, crazy, radical initiate, who's meditating 4 hours a day and all this stuff, was really an illusion that I was going to make this happen. Now, the good news is being radical like that, it wasn't me making it happen, but it still supported in a strange way me getting free, the freeing of the divine consciousness that is my truth from the pretense of being this. All those endless chanting and all those discourse and all those tapes and all those things were helping me be the butterfly getting out of the cocoon of self. So I couldn't see that when I first started because I was too lost in the game of this world and the story of this world. So I approached it like the next conquest, my next accomplishment of my zealousness to, quote, be enlightened, to become spiritual. I had all that going on too. So there's nothing wrong with that. That's kind of inevitable for us to have that because that's the natural progression in this game of illusion here. Is at first this world traps us by seducing us to be endlessly absorbed in the world. And when it can't do that, then when it can't hold us like that anymore, it turns us to an endless absorption with finding ourself. But when we find our personal self, that doesn't do much for us. No, they seem find the true self. And in a way, that's the true. That's right. That's pointing us in the right direction. But that true self is not something of this. Our true self is something beyond this. It is not limited. It is not identified. It is not form. It is essence. That call to essence, that call to the one that is present in every one of us all the time. We're just learning how to be one with it, to be present with it, to be available to it as it is always available to us. We are extending a reciprocity to God, who's always there for us and now will be there for God. Now, I don't know if this is making sense to you, but I'm sharing as much as I can to you about this from the perspective that I'm holding from my experience of this.
It comes forward as for me as I feel quite sick with longing to be with God.
Yeah, that'll create.
And
That's part of its gift. It creates this extraordinary longing. I think
it makes me very emotional about
yeah,
the longing. It's like when I tune in to
yeah,
that remembrance,
yeah,
I start to feel sick and emotional because I have such great longing to be with God.
yeah. And that longing invites a remembrance. Yeah. we're actually gifted with a kind of a suffering. We start to suffer that longing, and yet that longing takes us home, because it is when, like when John Roger talked about, your head underwater, how much you'd want it. It's that longing for that that's activated. And so when that remembrance touched you while we were talking, it activated that longing, and not just in you, but in others. It is that longing that is our greatest tool. Yeah.
So these are the ways for me with the ego, the mind, the this, the that, to just keep coming back to this, to surrender it back to the longing.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. It's a little bit of not a little bit, it's a major reframe of how we've all probably, most of us, I shouldn't say everybody, but most of us probably came into this. Is the next phase of the great search. And when it really comes about, it's like, wow, I had that wrong. But it's a beautiful thing. Bless you, Michelle, and thank you.
Thank you, Michael. God bless you.
Bless
Thank
you
you.
all. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness, we went over. Oh well, I had a feeling we might have. I don't have a sense of time when I'm doing them. So, well, I could just talk and talk, and I'm sure a lot of you would be happy to hear me. Let's close with a blessing. And I think there was a couple of people there that I saw hands for. Maybe next time you guys will get a chance. I think I'll remember. It's funny, I don't remember hardly anything, but Spirit helps you remember stuff that's important. And I know Lee probably knows because he's got great memory. So thank you, dear Lord, and thank you, dear friend, who came and visited with us tonight. We do ask for the blessings of remembrance to be present for each consciousness that participated with us this evening. We ask our Lord Jesus Christ to sanctify within us our connection to this truth of God's presence, and to support us all to walk the path of grace so that we might come into this more completely, more fully, and more immediately as it is allowed by God. We do ask, Father, that each person that is present be endowed in greater ways with the divine gift of this higher remembrance, that the way to activate that in each consciousness be supported in any way possible for the highest good. We're thankful, Lord, for this day and for this opportunity to learn and grow and serve. May thy will be done now and always, Lord. Amen. Next month, I believe we will have a 2-hour session. I think it's the last Wednesday of the month, which we have a double session. And my beloved Alicia will join with us, and so have more time for more questions and get some more chances to learn and grow. Bless you all. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Michael.
Mikey.
God bless you.
Appreciate it. Love you.
Love
Mikey, love you.
you.
Thank you.